And there is no doing everything right. I think life is messy and in between. And that's what makes it magical, really, I think. I've learned. It doesn't have to just fit. It shouldn't just fit, in fact. It should. It should be messy. That's where the magic happens. So maybe we embrace the mistakes and maybe we see them as opportunities to learn, but not as a definition or as a sentence.
La 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 la, soft edit.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Soft Edit. Today is a solo episode where I will be talking about something that I have long struggled with in my journey to healing, evolving, and self-love. We're going to be talking about mistakes. I have had a very long-term fear of mistakes. It used to be such a bad word for me for most of my life because I assumed that if you lived life in this way and you did everything absolutely right, then you'd win at life. I thought there was only one way to live and that you had to sort of reach all of those checkpoints and then your life would be worth it or have meaning or that you would be happy. And it's been the most sobering thing in the world to realize that that's not how life works. If you ask anybody that knows me well, especially when I was younger, they will describe me as particular because I saw this very one dimension of how life was supposed to go. And mistakes didn't really fit in the script of what life is supposed to look like. Not for me anyway. For everybody else, sure. Everybody else can make mistakes, but not me. And what I've been forced to kind of unlearn and really process over the last few years of my life is the role that mistakes play in making life interesting, in making life different, and in making life more meaningful than it otherwise would have been. If I were to really think about it, I think a lot of us who have this deep fear of mistakes and really failure, a lot of it comes from patterns we learn quite early in our lives. And it's a discussion I've had with friends and with therapists and other meaningful people in my life. A fear of failure is a pattern that comes from a trauma response. You think that if you get everything right, then whatever happened to you didn't happen to you, or it sort of overrides what happened to you, or it overrides what you've navigated. And nobody wants to look or feel less than, you know? We all want to look or feel like we're put together, which in reality, none of us are because everybody's struggling with something, right? But it's easy to get fooled into that sense of security of if my life looks good and if I do all the things I'm supposed to, then my life will be worthy and I will be worthy by extension. I think for me, when I started to realize how deep that fear was when I was in college. I had a conversation with a very close friend who was really struggling. And he came to me and told me, I'm struggling with like school stuff and everything just seems really hard. And he struggled to confide in me because he felt that I was perfect. And so I couldn't understand where he was coming from or what he was struggling with because I didn't make those kind of mistakes and my life was perfect. I don't blame him for that. I think my life did seem perfect. I went out of my way and almost killed myself to make it look perfect. And so here was a friend, a very good friend who mattered to me and still matters quite a bit to me, afraid to talk to me about something because it didn't seem like I made mistakes. But I did, of course. I'm human, and I made several, just like everybody else did. And what was different for me was how I reacted to mistakes. I think any mistake that happened or any mistake I did or had done really haunted me. It was so crippling. I couldn't live, almost like it was game over and this life was done with and I needed to start a new one. I took them so severely and really took them as like a sort of conviction on my existence or my right to exist, which is terrible and super unhealthy in hindsight. But what I've kind of been learning or navigating over the last few years is a different relationship with mistakes. I don't know that, I think everybody says, well, everything happens for a reason. And so if you made a mistake, there's a reason for that mistake. I'm not sure how much I believe in that, to be honest. Because to a degree, it absolves your responsibility. When you say that, everything happens for a reason, and so that mistake happened for a reason, I think it takes away your role and your responsibility. I've come to think of it now as a little bit different. If you make a mistake, you made a mistake, you can try to correct the mistake. There's mistakes you won't be able to correct, obviously. And sometimes they'll take you on a detour or on a different path than you had anticipated. But maybe that detour is welcome. Of course, we have to take responsibility for mistakes that we make, especially when we hurt people. But once you've taken the responsibility, it doesn't mean you just sit in it forever. It doesn't mean that one mistake is who you are forever. That's ridiculous. It's not. And even as I'm saying that, I'm realizing a version of me could not understand or believe that. But I've come to learn that it's true. You're going to make mistakes. A life without mistakes is not a life that's lived. So living by definition means making mistakes, risking things, doing things wrong, hurting people, growing from it, hopefully. And taking something with you from those mistakes. And I think if you never make mistakes, you never learn anything. If you never make mistakes, you never really explore that one-dimensional plane or life. And there is no doing everything right. I think life is messy and in between. And that's what makes it magical, really, I think. I've learned. It doesn't have to just fit. It shouldn't just fit, in fact. It should be messy. That's where the magic happens. So maybe we embrace the mistakes and maybe we see them as opportunities to learn, but not as a definition or as a sentence. And I think if you take away the fear of making mistakes, life becomes a lot more of an adventure, and it becomes a lot more exciting. This whole journey that I've gone through and this whole idea to start this podcast came from a series of mistakes. I didn't show up for someone the way that I should have. I didn't show up in a relationship that was very dear to me. I made several mistakes. And sitting in the guilt of that almost killed me because it was just so heavy and exhausting. And I sort of didn't know where to go from there. I'd made a mistake. I tried to fix the mistake. I couldn't. So what does that mean for me? And in that, I had to find my own voice. And I had to pull myself up and realize, okay, you made a mistake. You let someone down, it cost you something. Because mistakes cost you something. But it doesn't mean it's the end of your life. It doesn't mean your journey stops here. It doesn't mean your journey can't take an interesting turn. It doesn't mean you don't deserve anything good. It doesn't mean new magic won't come. It will. As long as you learn from the mistake. And as long as you remember who you are. And so the voice that was in my head has changed when I make a mistake. It used to be, this is the end of the world. You are worth nothing. This is a terrible thing for you to do. And now it's, okay, this sucks. We shouldn't have done that, maybe. Now we're sad, but we're not going to be sad forever. What did we learn? What is this teaching us? What is this sharing with us? How does this change how we look at life? And it's funny because I was having this conversation with someone I didn't know who was going through a similar journey, and something she did cost her relationship. And in one way, it was choosing herself. And her biggest fear was that it was a mistake. And she said, what if it's a mistake? And I realized how much all of us are living in fear of mistakes, but especially women, especially Black women, especially minorities or people that have been othered. We feel like we're given this one chance and we have to do everything really right to prove our value and prove our existence. So when we make any kind of mistake, it just ruffles us and disrupts our sense of self. But it doesn't mean that you're not worth anything. You're worth a lot. It just means that you're living. And mistakes aren't the end of your existence. They're a part of the journey. In fact, they're probably the detours that make life interesting. Who wants a life that's linear anyway? Everybody's seen that movie, so why not have it be non-linear and different and interesting, even though that does mean messy and painful and learning and unlearning, right? Why not? That's where the magic happens. And that's what I've learned. And embracing your mistakes is a part of your healing journey. I've also been forced to learn that one. You cannot pretend to be perfect and heal. You have to lean into your mistakes. You have to learn from them. Because the truth of it is you did what you could when you could. Sometimes you didn't have capacity for more. And so you can't go back and hold yourself accountable to the capacity that you have today. Those mistakes grew your capacity. You didn't have it to begin with. So if you never had those mistakes, your capacity never would have grown. And yeah, mistakes creating detours means jumping into the unknown, but everything in life is unknown. Even when you feel like if you follow a path or follow a plan, everything will be perfect. It's not. It's not. So I would say if you are someone navigating or struggling with your relationship with mistakes, approach it with empathy. Give yourself some kindness and some grace. Take accountability, of course. Take ownership, but don't make it the end of the world. It's not. You're gonna get through it. It's going to be an opportunity to reshape yourself or to learn something more about yourself. And you'll keep moving. Life still goes on. But it's shaped by your perspective of it. So you can either decide to hold on to something and make this your whole existence, or you can choose to learn from it and then just let it go. None of us are going to be perfect, and none of us are going to do everything absolutely right. So we have to be empathetic to ourselves the way we're empathetic to others. I think that's the only right way to do this, to live and to heal. So if I was to talk to myself at the beginning of this journey, I think I would tell her that mistakes are not the end of the world. They're just a part of the process. And a life without mistakes is a life that's not really lived. So live, make mistakes. It's not the end of the world. Just learn from them and move forward. And you're the only person who gets to determine what the next chapter of your life looks like. You're the only person who has a say in what joy looks like for you, what worth it looks like for you, what love looks like for you, what you want when you want it. And it's okay if you learn this stuff later in life, because I'm learning it later in life. Sometimes I really wish that I learned it earlier, but then I sit and think, okay, well, I did what I could when I could. That was the capacity I had at the time. I unraveled in the time I was supposed to unravel. I am unlearning in the time I am supposed to unlearn. And the little mistakes and disruptions and things that happen along the way, yeah, they suck, but they're a part of the process. And they're getting me closer to the evolution of who I am and who I'm going to be. And they're just a part of shaping me. And again, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing. So I would say, go and make some mistakes. Go and live your life. And when you make those mistakes, remember it's not the end of the world. They're just a part of your journey. They're detours and opportunities to learn and reshape and maybe even explore another dimension that you otherwise would not have even seen. So maybe we take them as fun little detours or opportunities to explore who we are, different levels of who we are and levels we're not used to exploring. A life without mistakes is a life that is not lived. So make mistakes. Take accountability. Be kind to yourself and learn from them. Thank you for sitting with me for the solo segment. And I hope I was able to change your view on making mistakes. And I hope you make plenty, because it is a necessary part of life. And love and healing, self-love especially. Thank you for joining us at the Soft Edit. Remember, you are the author and editor of your own life. So make it work for you. Just you.